Hello and welcome to Firstpost Spotlight, your front row seats to the stories shaping our world. From breaking news to controversy sparking global conversations, we are here to connect the dots, challenge the narratives and bring clarity to the chaos. I am Jaishankar and this is your deep dive into the news that matters. Let's take a look at today's top headlines. The UN says at least 542 civilians have been confirmed killed in Sudan's North Darfur in past 3 weeks, warning the actual death toll was much likely higher. The war has triggered the world's largest displacement and hunger crisis. The United Arab Emirates is set to lift a ban on its citizens traveling to Lebanon that was imposed during a diplomatic row in 2021. This comes a day after Lebanese President Joseph Aoun met with his UAE counterpart in Abu Dhabi. South Korea's Supreme Court overturns a ruling that found presidential frontrunner Lee Jae-myung not guilty of violating election law, potentially diminishing Lee's chances of running into the vote. Workers across the world kick off May Day celebrations with big marches and protests, many of which focus on US President Donald Trump's policies and fears of global economic uncertainty. And Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi inaugurates the World Audiovisual and Entertainment Summit Waves 2025 in Mumbai. The event aims to spotlight the Indian media and entertainment industry. Hello and welcome. Today we begin with the latest developments from the Indian subcontinent. As Prime Minister Narendra Modi pushes for decisive action against the perpetrators of the Pahalgam terror attack, New Delhi continues to rally global support against Pakistan-sponsored cross-border terrorism. In a key diplomatic move, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio spoke with Indian External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar. President Donald Trump's top diplomats reaffirmed America's commitment to cooperate with India in the fight against terrorism. While the US called for de-escalation in the region, India remained firm, stressing that the perpetrators, planners and backers of the Pahalgam terror attack must be brought to justice. In the latest move, India has shut its airspace to Pakistani airlines and is reportedly considering suspending shipping and postal services to Pakistan. Meanwhile, across the line of control, Pakistan, fearing an Indian response, has closed specific sections of its airspace for a month, particularly around Karachi and Lahore. For the 7th consecutive day, India has continued retaliatory action against Pakistani ceasefire violations across multiple sectors in Jammu and Kashmir. The chief of the National Investigation Agency, or the NIA, has also arrived in Pahalgam to review the ongoing probe into the terror attack. And as the diplomatic and military spotlight intensifies on Pakistan-sponsored terrorism, India is also reinforcing its naval power at this critical juncture. The Indian Navy is conducting extensive exercises in the Arabian Sea within its exclusive economic zone. In fact, warships remain on alert to track any unusual activity. Indian Coast Guard vessels are also deployed near the international maritime boundary of Gujarat, reinforcing India's presence in the region. Amid rising tensions, Islamabad has appointed Lieutenant General Asim Malik, the current ISI chief, as Pakistan's new national security advisor, signaling internal shifts within its military intelligence establishment. So, as defense and diplomacy take center stage with global partners watching closely, India stands resolute in its message that Pakistani terrorism will not go unpunished. And now shifting focus much of north to Canada, where the country's immigration landscape is evolving, with potential shifts expected under the re-elected Liberal government led by Mark Carney. Canada is currently facing a complex challenge, that is, balancing economic growth with sustainable population increases. A recent report indicates that the country's incoming Prime Minister, Mark Carney, is likely to maintain the Liberal Party's current immigration plan. This plan aims to ease pressures on housing and infrastructure by capping the combined population share of international students and temporary foreign workers under 5% by 2027. Currently, this group makes up nearly 7.3% of Canada's total population of 41.5 million. Carney himself has acknowledged the strain on the system, stating that past decisions led to an imbalance where the influx of foreign workers, students and new Canadians outpaced the country's capacity to absorb them effectively. The Liberal Party's strategy focuses on a multi-pronged approach. In fact, their agenda prioritizes transitioning temporary residents to permanent status and attracting highly skilled global talent throughout an updated global skill strategy program. The government intends to stabilize permanent resident admissions at below 1% of the national population annually beyond 2027. Specific targets are set at 395,000 for 2025, followed by 380,000 in 2026 and 365,000 in 2027. India remains the top source of immigrants. Media reports suggest that in 2024, over 130,000 Indians became permanent Canadian residents. While this number is substantial, it represents a nearly 9% decrease from the previous year. A significant factor influencing this policy shift is the rapid growth in Canada's temporary resident population, which surged from over 430,000 in 2019 to roughly 1.2 million in 2023, as per media reports. Meanwhile, existing cap on temporary residents, including students and workers, will remain in place. Now turning to international students. Media reports also suggest that last year, India continued to be the leading source of international students in Canada, with over 420,000 students enrolled. However, only 190,000 study permits were issued to Indian students, which is a decline of 32% from the previous year. A crucial element of the Liberal plan is the revitalized Global Skills Strategy program, which aims to expedite work permits for highly skilled immigrants. And enhancements to the program are anticipated under Carney's leadership. The Liberals also intend to collaborate with provinces to improve the recognition of foreign qualifications and work experience, particularly for professionals seeking jobs in their respective fields. These proposed immigration strategies aim to balance the need for skilled workers with the capacity to integrate newcomers effectively. Our next story is on Ukraine's hidden wealth. Buried beneath its war-torn soil lies something that the world wants. And yesterday, Kiev turned that buried wealth into bargaining power. Ukraine has finally signed a minerals deal with the United States, in a move that could reshape both economies. However, this historic agreement has seen some of the nastiest twists. It was in the making for months, and a February showdown between President Donald Trump and President Volodymyr Zelensky at the Oval Office nearly caused it to collapse. Even moments before the accord was about to be signed, negotiations were shrouded in doubt, with Ukraine demanding last-minute changes. But finally, a breakthrough was reached.
Thanks to President Trump's tireless efforts to secure a lasting peace, I am glad to announce the signing of today's historic economic partnership agreement between the United States and Ukraine.
At the center of this deal are key natural resources, and Ukraine is believed to have vast reserves of these: graphite, titanium, and lithium. These are highly sought-after minerals. From electric cars to weapon systems to renewable energy, they can be used anywhere. And the fight to access these commodities has led to diplomatic fallouts. Under the terms of this minerals deal, a US-Ukraine Reconstruction Investment Fund will be created. Ukraine will retain ownership of its resources, but any profits and royalties from new projects will be split 50-50.
Ukraine keeps control over all resources, natural resources, infrastructure which are not part of the fund and deal. Ukraine only makes contributions from new rents and royalties for natural resources. Our contribution will be 50%. No debts or aid that was granted to Ukraine before the deal was signed are not included in the deal. It is our important achievement reached in the talks with the partners. The deal only covers new contributions and new aid.
Now, Trump, who had pushed for this agreement, has framed it as an economic incentive for America. His administration says the deal will give the US a financial reason to keep helping Ukraine's defense rebuilding and post-war recovery. The US hopes this joint fund will help it get back billions in military aid it has provided to Kiev since the war began in 2022. Still, putting these plans into action won't be easy, because many of the richest mineral sites are occupied by Russia. Hence, extracting them won't be easy. For example, the Donetsk Oblast and Zaporizhia region are rich in lithium, coal and titanium. So, even though the road ahead is far from clear, it remains to be seen how Trump and Zelensky navigate that. The US and Ukraine might have signed this accord, but Putin still holds some of the cards. Today we end in the Philippines, where just 2 weeks after Google labeled the West Philippine Sea on its maps, the Filipino maritime region suddenly disappeared from both Google Maps as well as Google Earth. Instead, the entire Filipino maritime region was shown as an extension of the larger South China Sea, which is a geographical frame of reference favored by China that Manila firmly denies. This incident has led to massive uproar in the Philippines. In fact, a senior leader in the Filipino state, without naming China, asked the US tech giant if its policies are driven by fear. And as the uproar over the row grew both on and off the social media, the West Philippine Sea label reappeared on social media this morning. Filipino media cited a Google spokesperson as saying that the West Philippine Sea label had disappeared due to quote-unquote a technical issue, which was later resolved. But many Filipinos on social media platforms continue to ask if China actors had a role to play in the brief disappearance of the West Philippine Sea label on Google Maps. The West Philippine Sea label first prominently appeared on Google Maps on 14th of April. China, which claims the West Philippine Sea as its own despite an international tribunal ruling against it, was the first to be infuriated. Repeating its internationally denounced claims on the Filipino maritime zone, Beijing had said that the region, even the one near the Philippines, remains recognized as South China Sea.
I must point out that the South China Sea has long been recognized by the international community as a common geographical name, widely accepted by countries around the world and international organizations such as the United Nations.
Meanwhile, the Philippines, under a 2024 law, does not recognize a common geographical name for its maritime zone. Manila's law books have been clear that its exclusive economic zone is named West Philippine Sea and not South China Sea as Beijing claims. This is why the Google Map update to label the West Philippine Sea had been seen as a key contribution to what Manila views as the truthful representation of the region. And even as the Filipino geographical label got replaced by the Chinese one on the Google Maps, even briefly, the question remains, was this a mere technical glitch, as Google claims, or a geopolitical move influenced by external pressure? And that wraps up today's edition of Firstpost Spotlight. We will be back tomorrow, same time, with more stories that matter. Until then, stay informed and stay tuned to Firstpost.
From breaking news to the day's biggest controversies, shedding light on the world's top headlines, detailed analysis on the stories that matter the most to you. Catch it all on Spotlight at 6 p.m. India time and 12:30 GMT, only on Firstpost.
Greeting you with aloha and namaste.
I love India.
Presence, occupation of a territory by another country pertains to India, what we saw in Kashmir.
How do you see Trump's America?
Yes, the current administration behaves differently from the previous administration.
Are you saying that there are foreign powers who are trying to bring down the current government in Syria?
Exactly.
Bluntly, Iran, maybe Russia too.
Prime Minister Modi committed to South-South, cooperation.
Not over 50%.
Is Ukraine prepared to pay the price for that peace?
No compromises at the cost of territorial integrity and sovereignty.